could please take your seats. Good evening. My name is Abby Gruber, and I am the Director of the City of Westminster's Recreation and Parks Department. Welcome, and thank you for attending the third and final Planning and Public Input meeting for Wakefield Valley Park. I am sure many of you read the article in today's paper. Rest assured, turning Wakefield Valley into a luxury golf resort is not a viable option. Like most of you in the room this evening, and most of you that we have heard from through the participation in prior meetings and email, we appreciate Wakefield for what it has become to the community: a serene and peaceful place for exercise, reflection, stress relief, wildlife viewing, spending time with family, and enjoying the outdoors. The City of Westminster is committed to making sure that atmosphere is protected, while at the same time adding some recreational opportunities that are in demand or missing from our current inventory of facilities. The master planning process was never intended to destroy or defy what you love most. Your comments from prior meetings provided valuable guidance in the development of the master plan. As you review the plan, please keep in mind that it is impossible to satisfy everyone's request. We did our very best to make informed decisions that not only satisfied your request for additional recreational facilities, but protected the serenity and abundant natural habitat that has become very important to so many of you. I want to take a moment to address some key points about this plan. As you will see, the development of recreational facilities was kept to a minimum and was only incorporated into areas of the park that are already disturbed and highly trafficked. If you were present during prior meetings, this area was referred to as the park core and was defined by its general proximity to the main entrance and parking lot. Recreational facility development within the park core includes the following amenities for casual community use: 4 unlit multi-purpose fields, 6 pickleball courts, a dog park, 1 playground, 1 large event pavilion with restrooms that will be available by reservation, a lawn area with an adjacent amphitheater for community events. And that's it. Of the 187 acres, the park core covers 32 acres, leaving 155 acres undeveloped. This reflects the city's desire and your request to keep the park as natural as possible while balancing the needs of the entire community. The plan before you tonight speaks loudly to your request to keep the park natural with a concentration on reforestation, native plantings, dedicated pollinator areas, open meadow space, and stream restoration efforts. We marvel at and appreciate that nature has reclaimed this beautiful site, but even natural areas need a management plan to eliminate invasive vegetation, promote growth of native species, control erosion, and ensure access and sustainability. For example, think about the degraded state of the current trail system. If we did not address a new trail system in the master plan, the current trail system would soon become impassable, making sections of the park unavailable. Developing and enhancing the trail system assures future access and recreational equity by providing safe, accessible trails and bridges. The addition of access points in different areas of the park increases safety by allowing easy vehicular access if emergency responders need to reach a park user. Providing bicycle and pedestrian-only access points creates safe, valuable linkages to neighborhoods, the Wakefield Valley Community Trail, and other recreational amenities. We have also listened to your request for trash cans, benches, and dog waste stations. Site furnishings such as these have not been overlooked by the master plan, rather are usually not part of a long-range master planning document. When we begin to enhance different areas of the park, these items will be placed appropriately on the site plan and added accordingly. Additionally, we recognize that Wakefield provides an abundance of opportunities for interpretive exhibits, story walks, signage, and other types of educational opportunities. We are excited to imagine and in the future plan to develop meaningful, natural, and cultural history signage and exhibits at this site for the benefit and enjoyment of students, tourists, and park users. Lastly, the future of the Durbin House and Clubhouse have remained consistent concerns in your communications to us throughout this process. Please know the Durbin House is currently the subject of a grant-funded historic structure assessment. This assessment will provide the city with the necessary framework to advance efforts to rehabilitate this important historic structure, making it the focal point at the gateway to this beautiful park site. The clubhouse will also need to be evaluated to help determine if the building can be put back into use as a community space, or if it needs too much work and would be more economical to demolish. As we all know, it is impossible to please everyone, but believe me, we tried. A favorite quote of mine by Teddy Roosevelt sums it up. This country will not be a good place for any of us to live unless we make it a good place for all of us to live in. And I substituted some park words in there and rephrased it to say, this park will not be a good place for any of us to enjoy, play, learn, or recreate unless we make it a good place for all of us to enjoy, play, learn, and recreate. For those of you who have joined us in person this evening, please remember to do the following to keep everyone safe. Maintain a safe physical and social distance, at least 6 feet apart. This is especially important when we break out into groups to gain public input. Make sure your mask covers your mouth and your nose, and please keep your mask on at all times. Understand that due to COVID concerns, there will be no public microphone at which we can entertain questions in a town hall format. Instead, at the rear of the theater, you will see an area labeled Help Desk. Please visit this area during the breakout session if you have questions that you would like answered, if you need clarification on the material presented, or if you have other input that you feel needs addressed. It is important to note that questions asked at the help desk will be recorded and will become part of the public record from tonight's meeting. Anyone participating virtually can submit their questions to wakefieldcomments@westgov.com. Please note, emailed questions will not be answered in real time, but will be answered within 48 hours of this evening's meeting and will also become part of the public record. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you this evening Mr. Peter Stone, Senior Landscape Architect with Pannoni and Associates. Thank you so much. Pete?
Thanks, Abby. It's great to be here again, and again, we're really excited to be working on this project, and I'd like to reiterate what Abby said, just about how the master plan will develop. The comments that we've gotten, the input has been really helpful as we've prepared this, and I'm looking forward to presenting what we have to you tonight and then continuing the process. So just an overview again. You all have seen this plan a number of times. You're familiar with the site. The core of the site being at the middle there with the parking lot and the two existing buildings, and then the roads, Tahoma Farm Road on the east, and then Old New Windsor Road on the west, and the park access off of Bell Road on the north. And the site being 187 acres, like Abby said, and being split by that stream valley that runs along the bottom side of the picture there. And you all are very familiar with the site. You use it a lot, and that's one of the most kind of attractive parts about this project is it's an existing facility. It's already under use, and it's how do we as the design team come alongside you all to move this forward and to develop something or to create something that will be a a benefit for the community, for the city for a long time to come. The master plan goals. So I've gone over these a number of times with each previous meeting. There's 5 main goals that we're looking at with this project. Development of additional park activities, like Abby said. There's certain needs the city has. Obviously, there's a lot of trails and those types of facilities already present on the property, but there are certain needs that the city has, and how do we kind of fit those into this site? Is this site the right location for all those? The access to the site was a big part of the master plan, and we'll spend some time talking about that this evening, both vehicular access and then the next one, connectivity. How do you connect the existing trails, the existing pedestrian network to what's going on the site itself? How do you restore the site? It's been used as a golf course for 50-some years, and then more lately as a park. There's some things that can be done just to kind of restore the natural function of the site, to plant some additional trees, look at the stream itself. How do you kind of work with that and both create an amenity, but also create something that can kind of help improve the watershed and the community as a whole. And then how do you tell the history of the site? How do you kind of show what's going on the past on the site? And Abby had mentioned like historic or signage, interpretive signage, things like that, the restoration of the Durbin House. Those are aspects to telling the history of the site. So this evening, wanted to go through a couple of things. Again, thanks for all the input that we've gotten. It has been really helpful. So wanted to look at the master plan, kind of how we progressed, just briefly. Look at some concerns that have been raised over the last couple of meetings, and address those and kind of hopefully help everybody feel a little more comfortable with the way the master plan's going. And then look at the changes that we've made between last night's meeting and tonight. And then Abby's going to talk about some additional input that we would like to get tonight. And she mentioned already kind of the input that we want to get on phasing of the project. Kind of what are the priorities? So we'll talk more about that as we go through. Everybody's seen this map, or everybody who's been at the previous meetings has seen this map. So this is what we call an opportunities and constraints map. It shows the areas where there's certain constraints on the property, whether it's the stream itself, floodplain, steep slopes, wooded areas, areas that we want to limit our impact to and potentially look at doing restoration activities. So that light green shade that you see is those are what we're calling the resource protection areas. And then the yellow bubbles on there are areas that are available for potential development of park activities. Just areas that aren't encumbered by wooded areas or environmental buffers, the stream valley, the floodplain. So those types of areas were kind of identified early on so that we could focus the development of the master plan. We also looked with this one at a potential kind of preliminary take on a trail network, and we've continued to refine that as we've gone on. This was the master plan that was presented at the previous meeting. We've made some changes to it. We'll go over those. But I wanted to just mention, like with the master plan, this is an initial framework for developing future more detailed plans. So it kind of sets the overall framework, identifies areas for potential development, identifies kind of program elements like fields or trails or playgrounds, and then tries to organize those on a plan based on a variety of factors, a lot of which I just mentioned in that opportunities and constraints map. So the master plan is this initial framework. It's kind of like if you want to use the analogy of a house, when you're designing a house, you start with some real rough sketches. But at that level, you're not picking out the colors of rooms, hopefully, or figuring out where light switches go or things like that. Those are all details that come along later on. So this master plan, it's not a rough sketch necessarily, but it's a big overall framework that we're that can then focus future discussions and future planning efforts as more detailed plans are developed. One of the concerns that was raised over the last couple of meetings was just the amount of development that's going to go on the property. Obviously, the site is used a lot now as just kind of this natural area. You all enjoy that, and there's a lot of benefit to that. So we wanted to kind of pick through development, and what does development mean? What are we talking about when we say development? And then what are some metrics, if you will, that we can kind of use to show how much of the site's remaining as a natural area and how much is going to be more of a developed area. When we're talking about development, again, like Abby mentioned, we're talking about the park core largely. So that's the existing parking lot, the two existing buildings, or the Durbin House and the existing clubhouse. The area right around that, that's the park core, and that's where we're trying to focus development for a number of reasons. It's already disturbed. It's generally located away from the existing homes that surround the property. And it has a lot of infrastructure already present. It's got a parking lot that has 200 some parking spaces in it. So it's just a natural area to focus on for more the development or the what I had called previously the destination type activities. So when we look at the site and look at the developed area, that park core versus the rest of the site, and what I'm calling the natural area, there's roughly an 80 to 20 ratio, 80% to 20% ratio of developed area, the park core, versus the natural area, the rest of the site. So largely we're trying to leave the rest of the site alone. Obviously there'll be some improvements like trails, some small shelters, and we'll talk about some access points further on. But again, trying to focus the main bulk of development there in that park core. I also looked at existing and proposed impervious areas. So an impervious surface is any hard surface, pavement, rooftops, those types of things where water can't soak through it. So if you look at the current site, there's roughly a little over 8.5 acres of impervious surfaces on the site. Again, largely in that park core. That's about 4.6% of the site. If you look at what's proposed with this master plan, it's approximately 14.3 acres, or 7.6% of the site. So there's a 3% increase in impervious surfaces. A bulk of that increase is probably going to be in providing wider trails. The trail system that's out there now is probably around an 8-foot trail, 8-foot path, and we're looking at like a 10 to 12-foot path throughout the park. So that's where a lot of that increase comes in when you're looking at the existing and proposed impervious surfaces. But that gives you an idea of kind of the amount of development. We're going from a 4.6% impervious area to a 7.6% impervious area. So it's not a huge increase. We're not paving lots and lots of the site. And a lot of the area in the developed area, a lot of the development would be still pervious surfaces when we're talking about things like ball fields and stuff like that. And I wanted to mention as well, I talked about this last time, just again, the idea of scale for the park. So it's 187 acres. It's a big park, comparable to regional parks in other counties. From a distance perspective, if you go from kind of one side, Old New Windsor Road, all the way to the other side of Tahoma Farm Road, it's over a mile. It's over 6,600 linear feet, just as the crow flies, not to mention walking all the twists and turns of a pathway. So it's a big park. It's a long area. And the scale is something to really keep in mind when we're talking about kind of how much development's going to happen. And again, keep in mind those percentages, that 80 to 20 mix. Another concern that was raised was the concert venue or the event space that we talked about, and it's shown on the master plan. So there was concern about the size of that. What's that going to be like? Are we talking about like a Wolf Trap or a Nissan Pavilion, Meriwether Post Pavilion type facility? No, we're not. So this is an example. This is something that's down in Annapolis at Quiet Waters Park. It's a small band shell. I know the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra does concerts on this stage in the summertime, so it's a good-sized stage, but it's not a huge facility, and it's got a lawn facing it. People just sit on the lawn there, and it's a natural amphitheater or event venue at that park. What we're looking at is something like that for this facility. It's not a huge stage, loud concerts, lots of people. This is more family-oriented, small performance type of venue. Site access was something that was, again, part of the original RFP, and something that Abby and I talked about is something that may be good to address tonight. I know there were some concerns about the access points that we proposed, so we wanted to kind of walk through why we made some of the decisions on the master plan. The current access it's functional. I mean, you can access the site off of Bell Road, drive down. It does have some issues, some blind curves. It's a narrow driveway, but it is functional. It's probably substandard. I'd consider it a substandard access point, especially as you perhaps have more traffic at this site or like at certain times of the day. I mean, we haven't been out there kind of at different times of the day to see what that road's like as far as traffic coming and going. There's some things that could be done to that existing access point to improve it, some signage potentially, kind of especially along the blind curve. One of the biggest issues with that particular access point, though, is where it dumps out on Bell Road. So Bell Road's a 2-lane road. I've got some photos that will show. No sidewalks. There's no way for pedestrians really to kind of walk in off of Bell Road easily. So we're looking at, one of the goals of the master plan is to look at a potential new primary access point. And maybe that stays as a secondary access point. And then we also looked at pedestrian access to the site, making some connections for pedestrians to just be able to walk into the site easily, instead of walking through kind of cattle trails that have been created over the years. And then looking at some potential other access points for smaller parking areas. So this exhibit shows the main access off of Bell Road there up at the top of the screen, top left, or top, I'm sorry, you're right. The existing parking lot, and then a proposed new access point off of Tahoma Farm Road. And the reason we selected that location is usually when you're selecting intersections, you want to line them up with streets that you want to line streets up across from each other. You don't want to offset them. If you do offset them, there's certain distance requirements that you have to have. So that is a potential future access point for the whole park. We've also added a couple of small parking lots, one again off of Tahoma Farm Road down on the southern portion, or the bottom of the screen there, and then another one off of Old New Windsor Road, just to allow folks that live out that way the ability to drive in, park in a small parking lot, and access the trail from there. This is the current access, so you can see narrow driveway, no pedestrian improvements along Bell Road, no way for pedestrians to easily get to the site, and then the sharp turns there in the middle around that existing barn building. And then possibly off of Tahoma Farm Road, you've got a sidewalk system already in place, a road that's been built to current standards, can handle more volume. It's closer. It's got more direct access off of Route 31, Uniontown Road, so it's not as roundabout an access point as currently exists. Then wanted to talk some about site restoration. When we talk about site restoration, what do we mean by that? Couple of things related to that. So site restoration, we're proposing about 85 acres with the plan now of restoration, and I'll talk about what those mean. When I say restoration, what that means. Some of that area includes areas where we're putting trails through, down along the stream valley, trails, pavilions, bridges, those types of things, but no destination type activities like ball fields or things like that. Stream restoration is a term that I've used over the last couple of meetings. When I say stream restoration, we're talking about returning a stream to more of its natural character. A lot of times over the years, streams change as like more impervious areas develop around them upstream, so you get higher flows. The stream kind of degrades. So one of the things with stream restoration is trying to restore that stream to more of its natural function, its natural shape, doing replanting, planting native plant material along the stream banks, stabilizing the stream so that it doesn't continue to degrade. The stream out on site is not like, it's not a crazy bad, it's not in crazy bad condition, but it obviously could use some work. And then reforestation, planting additional native plant material on the site, controlling invasive species. Here's some photographs of what stream restoration kind of looks like. You may have seen stuff like this before, but where the stream channel is maybe regraded, things like stone are incorporated to stabilize the stream bank, to direct the flow certain directions, native vegetation is replanted, and you wind up with a healthier stream system that can better withstand the suburban type development that we live in that does affect streams. And then reforestation, I'm sure everybody's driven past farm fields or other places and seen these tubes sticking out of the ground. That's the first steps of reforestation, where you've got a seedling inside that tube and the tube protects it from deer and other animals just kind of eating that. But that allows native plant material to reestablish on a site and to develop forest cover and all the benefits that come with that. This is the revised master plan that we're presenting tonight. I'll walk through a couple of changes that we've made here. Probably the biggest change was eliminating some baseball fields that we'd had to the right of the parking lot, east of the parking lot, and adding in a couple more multi-purpose fields on the other side of the parking lot. And just making some other minor tweaks we added to this. So we talked about disc golf before, but we added some illustrations on the plan to kind of represent disc golf. Again, that's generally along the bottom of the screen, along the stream valley. And really just kind of did minor tweaks here and there. We didn't make huge significant changes from the last plan, but the baseball fields, that was the main change that we made. Wanted to show this plan. This is the master plan with everything taken off except the trails, just to illustrate kind of the trails that are proposed. There's 7 miles of trails proposed with this plan. It's a lot of trails. I'd mentioned like a 10 to 12 foot wide trail surface. It'd be a hard surface trail suitable for kind of people that run, bike, rollerblade, I mean, just any of those types of activities that would occur on a hard surface trail. This would be suitable for that. And we may look at, as we've kind of finished the master plan, may look at either noting in the plan narrative the potential for doing some natural surface trails like wood chips or grass trails. We may not specifically show those on the plan. That may be something that can just kind of develop over time on the site itself, because you have meadow areas that maybe you kind of mow a grass path through, or wooded areas that people walk through. I mentioned the plan changes. So the baseball fields, we talked about adding additional multi-purpose fields. We did add some additional reforestation areas. And then we were able to refine the sport courts some more to show just I think we're just showing pickleball courts at this point on the plan. And we took the tennis courts and other court stuff off of here. And again, just keep in mind I mentioned this previously, but the master plan, it's a framework for future improvement. So things may shift some over time, but this is a general framework to allow the development of future, more detailed plans. So it's something that can change some over time, but we're trying to provide this kind of big framework that will allow the next steps to be taken as we look at expanding the trail system or renovating the existing trail system or adding some ball fields. So this kind of sets the stage for all those future activities. And I'm going to turn it back over to Abby to talk about our next steps for this evening.
Thank you, Pete. There will be 3 opportunities for your input this evening around the perimeter of the room. We want to basically have you take a moment to prioritize some of the different categories that we broke out the facets of the master plan into. The reason for this is we want you to help us prioritize our approach to obtaining funding to make some progress with this master plan. And so if something is very low on the community's priority list, we certainly don't want to be investing a lot of time and money in developing that park amenity. So each question that is represented around the room is a separate opportunity for you to rank in order of importance 5 items in each category. So don't think you have to visit each exhibit and then give us your collective top 5. So it will be your top 5 priorities from each different station that's represented around the room. The categories are access and infrastructure. And I believe that's on the right-hand side of the auditorium, your right-hand side. Miss Stephanie McCowan will be manning that station. Trails and natural areas will be up front, and Mr. Stone will be hanging out in front of those exhibits to answer any questions. And then, of course, on your left, my right, recreational opportunities and facilities are broken out. So those are the areas of which we really want to hear from you, your priority ranking. One would be the most important item to you, and obviously you would work your way down to number 5 being the least important. So as I indicated earlier, to provide your input this evening, you will need the pen and the Post-it notes that were provided to you when you entered the Arts Center this evening. Please take these items with you when you visit the visuals around the room. Write your responses to each visual on a Post-it note and place it on the white response sheets provided. Please make sure that you number your responses in order of importance. To keep people spread out, each question is displayed twice in the same general location. So everything that has to do with recreational facilities, there's 2 opportunities to respond. There is a main visual in the center. It's really just for point of reference. We will have the master plan back up on the main screen so that you can use that as a visual aid when you're answering the questions. In front of the stage, the 2 large displays of the master plan, again, will be your opportunity to give us your 5 priorities for trail development. Please note, we broke out the trails on the master plan by color coding, and the categories go perimeter trail, western trail, park core trail, and eastern trails. And that was really just for us to say, this entire trail system can't be built all at once, so we want to know the areas of the park that are most important to you. And so it was our way to sort of parcel them out so that you could respond appropriately. So please do note that that is not phases for construction or future restoration of the trail system. It's just a way for us to sort of categorize and statistically validate your responses when we're going through categorizing this information. So as you provide input this evening, I will remind you of the same 4 points I reminded the audience of at the last meeting. You're here tonight because we want to hear from you, and we want to make sure that Wakefield Valley Park is something that you will be proud of and proud to have in your community. But we also want to make sure that Wakefield is a park that generations after you will enjoy and be proud of. Not everyone in the room tonight may have the same thoughts and ideas about this project. Please be respectful of everyone's input and opinions. Think bigger than you. When responding to the visuals around the room this evening, remember you are part of a large, diverse community with a variety of needs. And finally, relax. None of this is going to be built tomorrow. As Pete indicated, we are simply in the process of trying to plan the best possible park to serve the greatest good. This is our opportunity to begin with a framework and to start to achieve funding to make some progress to make sure that this park remains a viable recreational site for our community. If you are participating virtually, please pay attention to the instructions at the conclusion of this presentation. You will be provided with information on how to submit your input using an online application called Padlet. Padlet works best in Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge browsers. We recommend using a PC, iPad, or tablet for the best experience. Padlet does not function or display well on a cell phone. For an optimal experience, you should use a PC and sign up for a free Padlet account. You may still participate in Padlet without an account. However, you will not be able to edit your Padlet post without an account. To sign up for Padlet, please visit padlet.com. If you're having trouble using Padlet, remember you can submit your input to Wakefield Comments at westgov.com. The public comment period will remain open until the close of business on March 10th. When you are finished interacting with the visuals around the room, please exit through the side doors at the front of the theater. Thank you so much for your participation this evening, and I certainly look forward to the input that you provide us with around the room. Thank you. welcome to the 7:15 session for Wakefield Valley Park Master Planning. We're going to get started at 7:15 sharp, so that's about 3 minutes from now. So I would just remind you that if you want to be roaming around the room, looking at the visuals, feel free to continue to do that, but be mindful of the time because we will start promptly at 7:15. Just a couple of housekeeping items. The restrooms are located in the lobby of the Arts Council where you entered this evening, so if you need to use the restroom, by all means,
And you just never know what will resonate with people, what's absorb, and what their takeaways will be.
Well, 7:15 crept up on me quickly. Good evening, everyone. My name is Abby Gruber, and I am the director of the City of Westminster's Recreation and Parks Department. Welcome, and thank you for attending the third and final planning and public input meeting for Wakefield Valley Park. I am sure many of you read the article in today's paper. Rest assured, turning Wakefield Valley into a luxury golf resort is not a viable option. Like most of you in the room this evening, and most of you that we have heard from through participation in prior meetings and email, we appreciate Wakefield Valley for what it has become to the community, a serene and peaceful place for exercise, reflection, stress relief, wildlife viewing, spending time with family, and enjoying the outdoors. The City of Westminster is committed to making sure that atmosphere is protected, while at the same time adding some recreational opportunities that are in demand or missing from our current inventory of facilities. The master planning process was never intended to destroy or defy what you love most. Your comments from prior meetings provided valuable guidance in the development of the master plan. As you review the plan, please keep in mind that it is impossible to satisfy everyone's request. We did our very best to make informed decisions that not only satisfied your request for additional recreational facilities, but protected the serenity and abundant natural habitat that has become so very important to many of you. I want to take a moment to address some key points about this plan. As you will see, the development of recreational facilities was kept to a minimum and was only incorporated into areas of the park that are already disturbed and highly trafficked. If you were present during prior meetings, this area was referred to as the park core and was defined by its general proximity to the main entrance and parking lot. Recreational facility development within the park core includes the following amenities for casual community use: 4 unlit multi-purpose fields, 6 pickleball courts, a dog park, 1 playground, 1 large event pavilion with restrooms that will be available by reservation, and a lawn area with an adjacent amphitheater for community events. Of the 187 acres, the park core covers approximately 32 acres, leaving 155 acres undeveloped. This reflects the city's desire and your request to keep the park as natural as possible while balancing the needs of the entire community. The plan before you tonight speaks loudly to your request to keep the park natural with a concentration on reforestation, native plantings, dedicated pollinator areas, open meadow space, and stream restoration efforts. We marvel at and appreciate that nature has reclaimed this beautiful site, but even natural areas need a management plan to eliminate invasive vegetation, promote growth of native species, control erosion, and ensure access and sustainability. For example, think about the degraded state of the current trail system, the former cart paths. If we did not address a new trail system in the master plan, the current trail system would soon become impassable, making sections of the park unavailable. Developing and enhancing the trail system assures future access and recreational equity by providing safe, accessible trails and bridges. The addition of access points in different areas of the park increases safety by allowing easy vehicular access if emergency responders need to reach a park user. Providing bicycle and pedestrian-only access points creates safe, valuable linkages to neighborhoods, the Wakefield Valley Community Trail, and other recreational amenities. We have also listened to your request for trash cans, benches, and dog waste stations. Site furnishings such as these have not been overlooked by the master plan. Rather, are usually not part of the long-range master planning document. When we begin to enhance different areas of the park, these items will be placed appropriately on the site plan and added accordingly. Additionally, we recognize that Wakefield provides an abundance of opportunities for interpretive exhibits, story walks, signage, and other types of educational opportunities. We are excited to imagine and in the future plan to develop meaningful natural and cultural history signage and exhibits at this site for the benefit and enjoyment of students, tourists, and park users. Lastly, the future of the Durbin House and Clubhouse have remained consistent concerns in your communications to us throughout this process. Please know the Durbin House is currently the subject of a grant-funded historic structure assessment. This assessment will provide the city with the necessary framework to advance efforts to rehabilitate this important historic structure, making it the focal point at the gateway to this beautiful park site. The clubhouse will also need to be evaluated to help determine if the building can be put back into use as a community space or if it needs too much work and would be more economical to demolish. As we all know, it is impossible to please everyone, but believe me, we tried. A favorite quote of mine by Teddy Roosevelt sums it up. This country will not be a good place for any of us to live in unless we make it a good place for all of us to live in. And I substituted in some recreation and parks words. This park will not be a good place for any of us to enjoy, play, learn, or recreate unless we make it a good place for all of us to enjoy, play, learn, and recreate. For those of you who have joined us in person this evening, please remember to do the following to keep everyone safe. Maintain a safe physical and social distance, at least 6 feet apart. This is especially important when we break out into groups to gain public input. Make sure your mask covers your mouth and your nose, and please keep your mask on at all times. Understand that due to COVID concerns, there will be no public microphone at which we can entertain questions in a town hall format. Instead, at the rear of the theater, you will see an area labeled Help Desk. Please visit this area during the breakout session if you have questions that you would like answered, if you need clarification on the material presented, or if you have other input that you feel needs addressed. It is important to note that questions asked at the Help Desk will be recorded and will become part of the public record from tonight's meeting. Anyone participating virtually can submit their questions to wakefieldcomments@westgov.com. Please note, emailed questions will not be answered in real time, but will be answered within 48 hours of this evening's meeting and will also become part of the public record. With that said, it is my pleasure to introduce to you this evening Mr. Peter Stone, Senior Landscape Architect with Pannoni Associates. Thank you so much. Peter?
Thank you all again for having us here and for coming out tonight. We have really appreciated the input that we've gotten over the last series of meetings, and as we've kind of progressed with the plan, it's been very helpful to have that input. We're really excited about this project. It's been a lot of fun to be involved in it and to see this facility, the site that you all have in the city, and it's a really neat amenity that your community has. Everybody's familiar with the site, hopefully, to some degree. Sorry about that. So it's a 187-acre site. It's, again, an existing golf course. There is existing development on the site, the existing parking lot, and then the clubhouse facilities. They're right in the middle. And then you've got the stream valley running along the bottom of the screen there that is the primary feature of the site. And surrounded by Tahoma Farm Road to the right side of the screen, and then Old New Windsor Road to the left side of the screen. Again, a really, really incredible site. We've talked about master plan goals over the last series of meetings and wanted to just run through those again quickly as we start into what we're going to present tonight. So first of all, development of additional park activities. Like Abby said, the city has certain needs, certain unmet kind of needs as far as types of facilities. So we looked at this site as a potential location to add some of those. But again, wanted to focus on that park core area, which I'll talk more about. Access to the site was a primary part of this study. Can we improve the access at all from the current access? So we'll talk some about that, how we've gone about doing that. Connectivity to existing either pedestrian facilities or other trails that are in the area. How do you connect this park to those so that people can walk to this park, or that somebody on the Wakefield Valley Trail, for instance, could access this park? How do you make this part of the city's overall recreation infrastructure, if you will? How do we restore the site? We'll talk some more about reforestation, stream restoration, but that's a big component of this plan. Just given the input that we've gotten, it's important to the community, and it's an important kind of thing in today's regulatory environment. How do we do those things with this plan? And then how do we tell the story of the site, the past history of it? A lot of that's going to be done through the Durbin House, but also things like Abby mentioned as far as interpretive signage, things like that. How do you incorporate those things that tell more of the history of the site through this plan? Master plan, so the progress that, I'm going to kind of talk about the progress that we've made as we've received input from the community, made adjustments, but we also wanted to talk about some of the concerns that have been raised and address some of those and try to hopefully get people a little more comfortable with parts of the plan that questions have been raised about. And then Abby will talk some at the end about the input that we're seeking this evening. We put this plan together as part of our first meeting to show what we call opportunities and constraints. So opportunities for either improvement to the site or development of the site, and constraints that the site has just by its nature. The stream valley, for instance. Well, that's an area we really can't do much development in. It's got a floodplain. There's a stream buffer that the state and the county regulate. So we have to stay out of that area, but it potentially is an area where we can do some restoration. There may be some things like trails that go in some of those, what I've highlighted on the plan is that greenish tint. Those are what we're going to call resource protection areas. So try to identify areas like that up front where we'd here's areas where we could develop, here's areas where we need to really kind of stay out of. That then led to defining what we call a park core. We put this plan together, presented this last time. This was the previous master plan, previous iteration. Got a lot of good feedback on it. And we'll talk about some of the changes we've made in this plan tonight. As we looked at the site, the goal was not to just cram it chock full of stuff, but the goal was to identify kind of, like I was just saying, the constraints on the site, and then development areas. So as we worked through that, we kind of developed this park core area centered around the existing parking lot and the existing clubhouse facility, and where we're centering a lot of these destination type activities, ball fields, playgrounds, that type of thing. Versus the more natural areas where we've got a lot of linear activities or trail type activities where people kind of use those areas in different ways. But we wanted to leave a lot of space undeveloped on the plan itself. With this plan, as far as master plans go, there are frameworks for future development. This is not a plan that is going to happen overnight. It's not we don't have all the details fleshed out. If you're thinking about the analogy of like a house, somebody designing a house, you start with rough sketches, but at that point you're not picking colors to rooms or figuring out where light switches are going to go or things like that. It's a framework for future planning, and that's what this master plan is. Some of the concerns that were raised over the last couple of meetings, one of which was just the development of the site. And we don't want to see too much development on the site. So we looked at that a little closer and wanted to give everybody some metrics to maybe kind of measure that by. When we say development, we're talking about, again, the more destination type activities like ball fields where a family's going to come and spend some time at a specific location versus a trail where you're going to walk along the trail. So the park core, that center area, is where we centered those development type activities. So if you look at the amount of area in the park core versus the area of the whole site, that park core is roughly 20% of the whole site. It's 32 acres roughly. You've got about 155 acres of just other area that a lot of which will hopefully be restored, but it'll have things like trails in it, maybe some small pavilions, but generally not like ball fields or things like that. So that park core is really where we're trying to focus the more intense type uses. If you look at the amount of impervious surfaces in the site, so an impervious surface is like a surface like a parking lot, sidewalk, a rooftop where water's not getting back into the ground. The amount of existing impervious surfaces is a little over 8.5 acres. It's about 4.6% of the site. The proposed impervious surface, 14.3 acres, about 7.6% of the site. So it's percentage-wise, it's a pretty small number. The bulk of those new impervious surfaces are coming from wider trails. Most of the trails that are out on site are about 8 feet wide, roughly, and we're looking at 10 to 12 foot wide trails for the future trails, which is a more comfortable width for 2 people to pass each other, 2 bikes to pass each other, a biker to pass a group of walkers, that type of thing. There's a little more room there. And then the scale of the park as well is something that we'd ask people to keep in mind. This exhibit that we put together just shows different distances centered on that park core area. If you go from the far right side of the screen, the limits of the park over there across to Homa Farm Road, all the way down to New Windsor Road, that's about 6,600 linear feet, so over a mile as the crow flies in one direction. That's not a meandering pathway, which would be even longer. So it's a big park, 187 acres, like we've said. That's comparable to a lot of regional parks that other counties have. So big site. And there's a lot of room to do a lot of stuff on the site and keep a lot of it in a natural state. One of the other concerns we heard was about the concert venue. What's that going to be? What is it going to look like? How big is it going to be? So we looked at, wanted to give you some examples, but wanted to also tell you what it's not going to be. We're not looking at like Meriwether Post Pavilion or Nissan Pavilion or Wolf Trap. I mean, these big venues where you have a lot of people coming. The example that we're showing here, this is from Quiet Waters Park down in Annapolis. It's a small barn-type facility. Just to give you an idea of the size of the stage, the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra performs here in the summer times. So it's a decent-sized stage, but it's not a monster. And then it's got a nice lawn area that leads down to it. This is something like what's being envisioned for Wakefield Valley. So a smaller venue, family-type concerts, performances, not a big thing that's going to attract huge crowds and make a lot of noise. Site access was also something that was a part of the original RFP and something that we've looked at, but we wanted to touch on this evening in a little more detail. So the site currently is accessed off of Bell Road. It works. It's been used for years. It's probably a little substandard. We would consider it a little substandard. It's got there's some sharp curves in the driveway. Probably the biggest kind of knock against the access is that it's just a two-lane road. No sidewalks. There's no easy way for pedestrians to get into the site off of that access point. People who want to, from the surrounding area, who want to get to the site have to get in the car, drive, and then come in and park in the driveway. So it's not ideal from that standpoint. So wanted to look at a potential improvement to access. Also look at some potential pedestrian access points into the site. Right now there's really not a pedestrian access point that is paved per se. There's some cattle trails that kind of run into the site off the sidewalks along Tahoma Farm Road, but trying to improve that so that there's a logical pedestrian connection and connections to the other trails surrounding this. And then also looking at some other smaller parking lots to allow other access, people that live in other parts of the area surrounding this to kind of drive to a smaller lot, for instance, off of New Windsor Road. So this plan shows the various access points. We did show a small parking lot off of New Windsor Road. So somebody living down in that area could just drive in, park in a small lot, and then access the bottom part of the site. Showed a new main access point off of Tahoma Farm Road, and I'll kind of walk through some of the reasons behind that here in a bit. And then another small parking lot off of Tahoma Farm Road, down towards the bottom of the screen there. One nice thing about this site is that it's got a lot of infrastructure already in place. It's got a 200-space parking lot. A lot of new park sites don't have that. You got to create all that. So it's a big plus for this site, and it kind of sets that core area. So the existing access, it's a narrow road. It's got some sharp curve issues, kind of illustrated in that middle picture there around that building. And then again, it's coming out on a small two-lane road, no sidewalks. Tahoma Farm Road, by contrast, does have pedestrian improvements along it. It's got a sidewalk that can be connected to. It's a newer road, wider road, curb gutter. And it's also closer to connectors such as Route 31 or some of the major roads. Route 31, Uniontown Road, it's a little easier to get to than Bell Road. So as far as getting people into and out of the site, it makes some sense to do that. We wanted to touch on too, when we're talking about site restoration, what do we mean by site restoration? I've thrown that word around a lot in the last couple of meetings. Mainly looking at two things: reforestation, which is generally replanting large native shade trees, trying to reestablish a forest. But you're also looking to do things like control invasive species, and then just provide wildlife habitat, food sources, things like that. Stream restoration is something I've also talked about, and stream restoration is really looking to kind of bring a stream, restore it to its natural character. A lot of times, especially in areas like we live in the central Maryland area, streams get degraded over the years. They get eroded, banks wash out, and the streams get deeper and deeper cut into the earth. So stream restoration looks to restore some of the natural functionality of the stream, reestablish natural vegetation, stabilize the stream so that it can withstand the storms that we're seeing more and more frequently. These are some examples of kind of what stream restoration would look like, where there's some regrading, there's some implementation of stone or like riprap, large stones to kind of stabilize a bank, to redirect the flow. You're trying to restore some of the natural flow patterns. A lot of streams have a pool and riffle sequence. So you got a pool that's established that slows the water down, and then more shallow water, and then back to a pool. So you're trying to restore some of that functionality and also replant native vegetation. So stream restoration and reforestation kind of go hand in hand, especially on this site, since the site is dominated by this natural stream corridor. Yeah, everybody's probably seen things like this, these little tubes that get planted everywhere. Those are seedlings inside those tubes that eventually grow. The tubes are there to kind of protect the trees while they get established. But you're looking at something like this to kind of reestablish that natural forest cover on the site in places. And going along with that, you're also looking at invasive species management. There are invasive species on the site, and you want to try to manage those. The plan up on the screen now is this is the plan that we came up with based on the input we got in the last meeting. We'll have it up on some boards in front here in a bit. But wanted to kind of talk through some of the changes that we made. Not a lot of changes. Probably the biggest change was moving the baseball fields that we'd shown previously kind of on the right-hand side of the clubhouse area, eliminating those, adding some more reforestation in that area, and then moving adding some more multi-purpose fields to the left of the clubhouse and parking lot area. Also looked at some tweaks to the sport courts that we'd shown previously. Took off we had some potential tennis courts shown. We took those off and added a few more pickleball courts to the plan. And also started to kind of show on the plan disc golf as a possibility. We had talked about that previously, but it hadn't really been shown on the plan. That's something that really has to get planned out down the road, but it's part of the plan now. Again, keep in mind the goal with this was to not overwhelm the site. We're trying to focus the more intense activities there in the middle and then keep a lot of the site just as a natural setting so that you can continue to use it as you all use it today. We put this slide together to just show the trail system that's proposed on the site. So took everything else off just for this slide, just to show kind of the amount of trails. So we're showing upwards of about 7 miles of trails on the site. Again, they won't all get developed at once, but this is how the site's currently being used, and we think it's important that you continue to use the site that way, and a lot of the feedback we're getting is emphasizing that this is a huge amenity to the community. These would be primarily paved trails. We may look at unpaved trails, and some of the unpaved trails may not actually show up on a plan. That may be something that kind of gets developed over time. Maybe as you have meadow areas that are developed, those kind of a pathway gets mowed through those kind of on a periodic basis, or people walk through the wooded areas that are developed. So something like some of those more natural type trails may develop over time, just naturally. One of the things to keep in mind on the master plan is that, again, like I was saying, it's a framework. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. You're not going to kind of bang through the whole thing all at once. It's a framework that allows kind of a logical progression of development. As funding becomes available, as certain needs kind of rise to the top, and as we hear input from the community. It's a big overall framework, so there will be changes as designs are more fully thought through as you get down into some of the more details, but always going back to this plan as the overall framework. So Abby's going to come back up and kind of give you guys some further instructions and some things that we'd like you to think about the rest of this evening.
Thank you, Pete. This evening, 3 opportunities will be available for your input and are posted around the perimeter of the room. We want to know what aspects of the master plan are most important to you. This will help us prioritize funding and guide the timing and implementation of future projects at the park. Each question is a separate opportunity for you to rank in order of importance 5 items from each category. The categories are access and infrastructure on this side. Trails and natural areas will be in front of the stage. And recreational opportunities are available for your priority ranking on this side of the auditorium. To provide input, you will need the pen and Post-it notes that were provided to you when you entered the Arts Center this evening. Please take these items with you when you visit the visuals around the room. Write your responses to each visual on a Post-it note and place it on the white response sheets provided. Please make sure your responses are numbered in order of importance, 1 being the most important and 5 being the least important. To keep people spread out, each question is displayed twice in the same general location. As I indicated, in the front of the stage, you will find 2 large displays of the master plan presented this evening, with your opportunity to tell us about your top 5 priorities for trail development and natural area designations. To your right, you will have your chance to rank by order of importance the proposed access and infrastructure projects contemplated on the final version of the master plan. And to your left, you will have the chance to review the list of proposed recreational opportunities and facilities and rank in priority order. Each station will have a staff member available to help. Please respond only to the question being asked, and please make sure you list out your top 5 priorities from each category of importance. Responses are individually counted, so even if your priorities mirror a response that is already posted, please post it again. As we move into the public input session, the screen behind me will also display the master plan for your reference as you contemplate and respond to the questions around the room. As you provide input this evening, I will remind you of the same 4 points I reminded the audience of during the last meeting. You are here tonight because we want to hear from you. We want to make sure that Wakefield Valley Park is something that you will be proud of and proud to have in your community. But we also want to make sure that Wakefield is a park that generations after you will enjoy and be proud of. Not everyone may have the same thoughts and ideas about this project. Please be respectful of everyone's input and opinions. Think bigger than you. When responding to the visuals around the room, remember that you are part of a large, diverse community with a variety of needs. And most importantly, relax. None of this is going to be built tomorrow. We are simply in the process of trying to plan the best possible park to serve the greatest good. As Pete indicated in his presentation, this is very much a framework for us, a starting point to be able to begin to establish what's important and where we can find funding sources to advance the goals of the master plan. And it may change over time, but this is what we need to do to start to assure access to this beautiful park site. If you are participating virtually, please pay attention to the instructions at the conclusion of this presentation. You will be provided with information on how to submit your input using an online application called Padlet. Padlet works best in Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge browsers. We recommend using a PC, iPad, or tablet for the best experience. Padlet does not function or display well on a cell phone. For an optimal experience, you should use a PC and sign up for a free account. You may still participate in Padlet without an account. However, you will not be able to edit your post without it. To sign up for a Padlet account, please visit padlet.com. If you are having trouble using Padlet, remember you can submit your input to wakefieldcomments@westgov.com. The public comment period will remain open until the close of business on March 10th. When you are finished interacting with the visuals around the room, please exit through either the side doors or from the main entrance the way you came in. And please know how very appreciative we are of your participation in this process and your presence here this evening. If you have any additional questions for me, you'll be able to find me at the rear of the room at the help desk. Thank you so much.
What was